His arm was blown off, and he was still running toward us. Lieutenant Korvek of the Vrail Dominion froze as the human, soaked in blood, uniform shredded, bone glinting white where his limb had been severed, charged down the ruined trench line like a mad animal. In one hand he held a cracked med kit, its glowing green light flickering weakly against the oily rain. His other arm, what was left of it, was a smoldering stump. Korvek screamed, "Fall back! Fall back!" But it was too late. The front rank of his squad turned their plasma carbines toward the lunatic human, and that's when the screaming started. Not from the human. From his soldiers. The med kit opened mid-sprint. One-handed, the human flung a tri-spray burst of autofoam into the face of a Vrail trooper before shoulder-slamming another into a collapsed barrier. The foam erupted on contact, hardening instantly into a clinging white crust that muffled airways and fused weapons to armor. Within seconds, for Vrail were down, flailing, blind and suffocating inside their own suits. Commander Korvek, permission to retreat. No, hold thee. But that's when the human injected himself. Right into his own neck. The silver stim syringe hissed, and his eyes went wide. Then he roared. The sound wasn't like any war cry Korvek had ever heard. It wasn't calculated. It wasn't ceremonial. It was primal. A banshee wail ripped from the lungs of a half-dead predator too stubborn to lie down. He should have dropped. Should have passed out. He was bleeding from at least 7 visible wounds. Instead, the human moved faster. He grabbed another Vrail by the jawplate, tore the helmet off with a single wrench of his remaining hand, and bit the soldier's face. Bit the face. Korvek watched in horror as blood sprayed the trench wall. The Vrail's scream gurgled into silence, and the human, frothing, half-laughing, slammed another dose of burn foam over his own bleeding stump and kept going. 3 more Vrail turned to run. He gunned 2 of them down from behind with their own weapons, screaming something in his native tongue that the Dominion's translators couldn't keep up with. Korvek activated his emergency signal. Command. Command. Code Alpha Red. Human medtech operative detected. Fallback protocol. Fallback protocol. The command line crackled. Confirm. Combat medic sighted? Yes. All units withdraw. I repeat, all units, retreat on sight. 10 minutes earlier, the field was calm. Korvek had been winning. The human outpost, Firebase Galloway, was minutes from collapse. The orbital bombardment had gutted their turrets, Vrail skirmish lines were overwhelming the bunkers, and the last of the outer defenses had been silenced. The kill count was rising. Everything had gone to plan. Until the humans screamed for a corpsman. And everything changed. Corpsman. Medic. Medic. Private Allen's face was half gone, melted by plasma. A smoking hole pulsed where his right lung had been, and he was convulsing in the mud as 3 other soldiers screamed for help. None came. Then the comms crackled with one voice. Grim. Determined. Hold him still. I'm inbound. 3 clicks away. Running through a no-man's land that was still under fire. A death sentence for anyone sane. Staff Sergeant Elias Reeve didn't give a damn. He ran through broken wire and burning shell craters, body already hit twice by glancing fire. His hand clutched his standard-issue medical satchel, reinforced with scavenged plating, and a belt loaded with hybrid stims and combat drugs, half of them technically banned under Geneva IV. Reeve had never cared about the rules. He only cared about one thing. You don't die on my watch. By the time Korvek's drones picked up the lone human sprinting toward the breach, it was too late to intercept cleanly. The trenches were too narrow for artillery. The human darted between cover with suicidal speed, even using fallen Dominion soldiers as living shields. Target is a non-combatant, one of Korvek's lieutenants said, confused. He's charging straight into our line, another muttered. Is it a glitch? Some kind of bait? Scan again. The drone reanalyzed. No heavy weapon. No armor. Just basic combat fatigues, medical insignia on his shoulder. But he didn't look like a medic. His face was grimy, streaked with soot and blood. He had the eyes of someone who'd seen too many people die. And his heartbeat, according to sensor logs, never wavered. Not once. Wait. Look at his med kit. Korvek narrowed his eyes. It wasn't standard. It was patched together. Multiple tech systems welded into one. Part Dominion, part Terran. The signature flared with hybrid energy signals. Overclocked and unstable. What the hell kind of medic builds his own field kit? A human one. Reeve dropped to his knees beside Alan, slapped a stimulant patch on the soldier's heart, and jammed a pain suppressor needle straight into his spine. Talk to me, Alan. Come on. You like hockey, right? What's the best team in the league? Alan gargled blood. Wrong answer, Reeve muttered. It's the Flyers, obviously. His medkit cracked open with a hiss. Inside, a chaos of tubes, surgical glue, anti-shock foam, and one bright red stim injector with an unauthorized Dominion tech shard rigged to the tip. Reeve didn't hesitate. He stabbed it straight into Alan's chest. The soldier arched off the ground, gasping like he'd come back from the dead. Because he had. The tech fusion inside Reeve's kit was illegal for good reason. It jump-started organs with reckless, painful voltage. But it worked. Especially on humans. Even more on dying humans. And Dominion Command had seen it far too often. Korvek watched in cold disbelief as Private Allen, who had no face seconds ago, rose shakily to his feet and grabbed his rifle. Impossible. Then another. A corporal missing half a leg was screaming in pain, blood spraying. Reeve sprinted to him, jabbed his thigh with a concoction, and pressed a detonator to a foam charge. With a pop, a biosplint formed mid-air around the shattered limb. The soldier got up and started walking. Korvek's translator whispered the human's name. Elias Reeve. Combat medic. Terraborn. 11 deployments. 33 confirmed saves behind enemy lines. A pause. Known alias, Reaper with the medkit. He shouldn't have been here. Reeve had been pulled from frontline duty a year ago. Too valuable to risk. But he kept volunteering. Every time command refused, he just showed up at the next hot zone anyway. It was becoming a problem. So they stopped fighting him. Reeve wasn't just a medic. He was a force multiplier. A psychological weapon. Humans believed in him. Soldiers who should have died rose screaming and fired again. Those who saw him limp through hell and keep going? They followed. Enemy units that encountered him once were never the same. Dominion studies classified his presence as moral contamination. In plain words, he made humans too damn hard to kill. Korvek was still processing the chaos when Reeve's rampage began. He'd administered medical aid to 6 soldiers in less than 2 minutes, dodged plasma fire like he had precognition, and then, already half dead himself, had taken up arms. Not to kill, but to protect. He tackled a grenade meant for a wounded engineer, dragged a dying sergeant across 40 meters of open fire, ripped a Dominion sniper from his perch and used his own cape to blind him, all while applying treatment with the precision of a surgical drone. Then he ran out of supplies. And something in him snapped. Reeve is down to melee. He's using their weapons. I don't understand what I'm seeing. The Vrail comms dissolved into chaos. The humans weren't just holding, they were pushing forward. Behind Reeve's charge, injured soldiers surged, shouting his name like a battle cry. The tide was reversing. Korvek watched 3 squads break formation and retreat without orders. Panic was spreading like wildfire. Some of his elite refused to fire at the human. Others shot and missed, too shaken to aim. Then he saw it. That damn glowing medkit. Even cracked, even half empty. It was burning in the darkness like a holy symbol. He'd read the reports. Enemy units are not to engage humans marked as field medics unless absolute superiority is guaranteed. Any human actively using hybrid medical tech is to be considered Tier 1 priority threat. If a human is still treating wounded while under fire, do not attempt to kill. Retreat immediately. Why? Because once Reeve started running, he never stopped. And now he was coming for Korvek. Alone. Bleeding. One arm. Eyes like fire. Clutching the last working piece of his medkit. Korvek ordered a full withdrawal, but it was already too late. The last thing he saw was the flash of a shattered stim canister flying through the air, improvised into a grenade, right before the trench behind him exploded. Everything went black. The trench was gone. Korvek clawed his way out of a crater, ears ringing, armor scorched and cracked. Black smoke curled from the jagged edges of what used to be his command post. The emergency auto-shield had taken most of the blast, but not all of it. His left eye was gone. His comm unit was slag. And all around him, Dominion soldiers were either dead or in full retreat. A single human, he rasped, coughing blood, did this. He knew the answer before the words left his throat. And then the message came. Burned into every Vril visor still operational across the battlefield. A Dominion-wide combat protocol override. If a human is spotted carrying an active medkit and advancing under fire, retreat or be lost. 3 hours later, Reeve was still moving. His left arm was a bundle of gauze and temporary nerve clamps. He'd lost too much blood, and the cocktail of combat stims keeping him upright was starting to fry his nervous system. He didn't care. There were still wounded. Firebase Galloway was holding for now, but barely. The Vril had pulled back, but everyone knew it wouldn't last. The Dominion didn't accept losses. They rearmed, regrouped, and learned. And they were learning fast. But so was Reeve. He had 3 surviving soldiers from the forward med detachment. No comms. No drone cover. No air support. Just a backpack full of repurposed trauma kits, 3 unstable Dominion injectors he'd pried from dead enemies, and a makeshift stretcher cobbled from a bunker door and tank treads. He didn't need orders. He didn't need sleep. He needed every human on that line to stay breathing. Private Lang was his next patient. The kid was barely 20, face slick with blood, clutching a stomach wound that hadn't stopped pulsing since the second shell hit. Reeve skidded into cover beside him. Lang, talk to me. What hurts? Lang managed a weak grin. Everything. But, mostly my feelings. Someone called me a rookie. You are a rookie. Yeah, Lang wheezed. But it still hurts. Reeve stabbed a tri-patch over the wound and hit the Dominion injector. The thing growled as it activated, literally growled, like it was alive, and Lang spasmed as the foreign compound hit his system. His breathing steadied. Holy, that's not standard protocol, Lang muttered. Reeve didn't even glance at him. Neither is dying. He hauled the kid to his feet, slapped a stim tab on his neck, and pushed him toward the fallback line. Go. Find a rifle. Shoot anything with scales. Across the field, Dominion command was in disarray. Korvek had survived, but barely. He'd been extracted to the Eastern Command Ridge, where the War Council tried to make sense of the reports. One combat medic shattered 3 forward lines, a Vril tactician growled. He's not even carrying a proper weapon. He is a weapon, Korvek muttered. Sir. Korvek turned, slow and cold. That med kit, that's the key. It's not just a tool. It's symbolic. The humans follow him like a talisman. They see him, and they don't break. They get up. But he doesn't kill. He saves. How is that a threat? Because our troops are afraid of him. Korvek slammed his cracked fist on the table. He's not here to fight the war. He's here to make it impossible for us to win it. The Vril adjusted. They always did. Within hours, a new strategy was issued. Engage all human medics at range. Deny battlefield access. Deploy suppressive fire grids. Priority target, Reeve. Use disruptors. Burn the terrain. Block all rescue paths. Force the humans to bleed without hope of aid. They didn't need to kill the medics. They just had to make it impossible for them to reach the wounded. And so, the terrain changed. Reeve emerged from the ravaged trench line and paused. Something was wrong. He scanned the area with instinct born from 100 battlefields. The air smelled too clean. No smoke. No charge. No blood. Too quiet. That's when the shell slammed into the ridge beside him. It wasn't an explosive. It was a terrain disruptor. A shimmer rippled through the ground, and the soil beneath Reeve's feet liquefied, turning into a pulsing, jellied sinkhole that swallowed half the embankment. He leapt sideways, barely clearing the edge, but his foot caught the edge of a Dominion gravity snare. Suddenly, his body felt 10 times heavier. He collapsed. 2 Dominion soldiers appeared on the ridge above him. Stealth units. Camouflaged. Silent. They didn't fire. Instead, they destroyed his medkit. A sniper bolt screamed from behind them, striking the kit and igniting its energy cells. The satchel detonated in a burst of white flame. Reeve screamed. Not in pain. In rage. The soldiers hesitated. Just for a moment. That was enough. Reeve rolled, tore a knife from his boot, and threw it. The blade caught the first rail in the throat. He choked, clawed at his armor, and fell backward down the ridge. The second tried to raise his rifle. Reeve surged forward, fueled by adrenaline and sheer hatred. He tackled the alien mid-turn, drove his knee into its joint socket, and twisted the rifle from its grip. He didn't shoot. He beat the Vrail to death with the butt of its own weapon. Then, bleeding from his side, panting, vision blurring, he crawled to the ruined remains of his medkit. Charred. Melted. Beyond repair. He knelt over it, shaking. And then he started pulling out pieces. Burned clamps. Blackened foam canisters. A twisted vial of stimulant. A half-melted Dominion injector. One by one, he laid them out. Then he started rebuilding. 2 kilometers away, Captain Imani of Firebase Galloway watched from a drone feed. "He's still alive," she whispered. A lieutenant frowned. "He's got no kit. He's out of stims. Half his gear's slag. What the hell can he do now?" Imani stared at the feed as Reeve tied wire around a cracked stim gun and jammed it into a salvaged rail dispenser. "He's doing what humans always do," she said softly. The lieutenant blinked. "What's that?" "Turning garbage into miracles." By nightfall, the humans were losing again. Reeve was pushing himself beyond sane limits, treating 5 wounded for every one of his stims, inventing solutions from scraps. Blood loss was catching up. His body was shutting down. But he refused to stop. He pulled 2 soldiers from under a collapsed comm tower using nothing but a broken shovel and sheer will. He sealed a chest wound with a protein bar, a rag, and a prayer. He ripped armor plating from a dead enemy and used it to shield a patient under mortar fire. They kept coming. And he kept going. Until they didn't. Just before dawn, Reeve heard the call. Bravo team down. Sector 6. Civilians. Trapped. No support. We're losing them. He didn't hesitate. Didn't even speak. He ran. Through shattered corridors, down a ravine coated in sulfur gas, past the Dominion kill zone they'd marked as a death run. No one else followed. It was a trap. He reached them anyway. 7 civilians. 2 soldiers. 1 dead child. The mother was sobbing, holding the body. Reeve froze. His breath caught. And then he knelt. Softly. Gently. He scanned the girl's vitals. Flatline. Skin already cooling. No pulse. But her brain scan. A flicker. He moved faster than he ever had. The Dominion injector. The power shard. The illegal voltage override. He assembled them mid-air. Slammed it into her chest. The girl spasmed. The mother gasped. And Reeve started CPR. 30 seconds. Nothing. 1 minute. Still nothing. 2 minutes. The child coughed. Her eyes opened. The mother SC. He walked into the open, holding the girl's tiny hand, a red signal flare clenched in his other fist. Railguns tracked him instantly. He raised both hands, dropped the flare, and knelt. He didn't have a weapon. He didn't have armor. He only had his patient. Behind him, the mother clutched the girl and the soldiers stood protectively. Then, something happened. The Vrayl lowered their weapons. All of them. One by one. They stepped back. And they let him pass. Korvek watched the feed from the command ship, silent. His advisor whispered, "Shall I issue a strike?" "He's in the open." Korvek didn't answer. He watched as the human, drenched in blood, shaking with exhaustion, carried the child back into the human lines, too weak to walk but refusing to stop. That damn medkit was still clutched to his chest. Even burned and broken. It glowed. "Cancel all active pursuit," Korvek said finally. "Sir. Look at our soldiers. They don't want to kill him. They're ashamed." Ashamed. Korvek turned away from the screen. Because he's everything we tell ourselves we are, but aren't. Cliffhanger ending. That night, as the humans huddled in the shattered firebase, Captain Imani knelt beside Reeve. "You've done enough," she whispered. He didn't answer. He was unconscious. His pulse was weak. His skin was pale. And his medkit was empty. Imani turned to the medic tent. "Someone get me power cells, hybrid stimulants, anything. He saved half this base. We're not letting him go out like this." A silence fell. Then Lang, shaking, bruised, still limping, stepped forward. He dropped his own stim pack on the table. Then another soldier. Then another. Until a full pile had formed. Reeve's eyes fluttered open. And for the first time in days, he smiled. Weak. Bloody. Unbreakable. Then the base sirens screamed. Dominion forces incoming. Stronger. Faster. Heavier than ever before. A full retaliation force. 3 carriers. 5 battalions. Too many. Far too many. The humans looked to Reeve. He pushed himself upright. And said one word. "Ready." The medbay shook from the force of the bombardment, but Reeve didn't flinch. He couldn't. His body was done, pushed past every sane biological limit, joints swollen, vision flickering, heartbeat jagged, but his mind was locked on one truth. The wounded weren't going to save themselves. Outside, Dominion dropships screamed through the clouds like silver knives, releasing waves of armored infantry. The ground trembled as mech frames deployed into the valley, each standing 4 stories tall. Railguns rotated into position. Plasma mortars began bracketing the perimeter. Firebase Galloway was about to become a memory. "Defensive line will collapse in under 20 minutes, Captain Imani said grimly, reading the drone feed. "No reinforcements. No evacuation. We're it." Reeve tightened the straps on his rebuilt medkit. Still dented. Still flickering. Still working. "I don't need 20 minutes, he rasped. Imani stared. "You're not even fit to walk. I've got another stim left. Reeve, if you inject that." He slammed it into his thigh. His body convulsed. Then he stood. 5 minutes later, Reeve walked into the front trench. The silence that followed wasn't natural. It was reverent. A dozen soldiers, bloodied, exhausted, some barely standing, turned to look at him. No speech. No orders. He didn't need to say anything. He was the reason they were still breathing. Then the first blast hit. The Dominion didn't bother with another warning shot. 3 kinetic shells cratered the northern wall, shredding barricades and vaporizing 2 sentry towers. The air was filled with the shriek of falling steel and the scream of injured soldiers. Reeve didn't run from the fire. He ran into it. Korvek stood aboard his command carrier, overlooking the battlefield through augmented lenses. Status: Firebase outer wall breached. Resistance stiff. Human defenders rallying around the combat medic again. Korvek scowled. Of course they are. A Vrayl communications officer chimed in. Do we initiate personal targeting protocol? Focus on the medic. Korvek didn't answer right away. He watched as Reeve pulled a soldier from beneath a collapsed wall, jammed a synth blood vial into her neck, and, while still kneeling, tossed a canister that ignited a firebreak around 3 charging Vrayl. Not a weapon. Just a thermal sealant. But used perfectly. And that's what made him dangerous. He's not just saving lives, Korvek muttered. He's reshaping the battlefield with every move. Back at the trench, Reeve was moving like death itself. His muscles twitched unnaturally, stim overload, but every motion was precise. He used every piece of rubble, every body, every crater to his advantage. A Dominion grenadier leveled a launcher at the southern wall. Reeve tackled him before he fired, disarmed him, and slammed a stun shot into his spine. The alien spasmed, convulsed, then fell limp. He didn't kill him. He never killed unless he had no choice. Instead, Reeve sprinted past him to the next casualty, a teenager from the support staff, impaled through the leg with a shard of armor. No, I'm done. I can't, the boy sobbed. Reeve said nothing. Just worked. Field cauterization. Pain suppressor. Lift. Drag. 20 meters later, the boy was in the fallback tunnel. Then Reeve was back in the fight. Imani watched from the command screen. He's buying us time. No, Lang corrected quietly. He's buying us a future. Can't we pull him back? Lang shook his head. You'd have to sedate him. And even then, he'd claw his way back out. A pause. Let him do what he was born to do. The Vrayl adjusted again. This time, they weren't subtle. An aerial strike team. 12 Dominion Phantoms. Elite stealth killers. They dropped in near silent, bypassing the human lines completely, dropping behind Reeve's position like ghosts. Not to kill. To erase. They wanted him gone, and fast. Reeve heard them a heartbeat before they struck. His instincts screamed. He rolled, slammed a flashburst from his medkit into the ground, and the trench lit up in white fire. 3 Phantoms staggered back, blinded. He didn't fight them head-on. He ran, toward a wounded comms tech, while dragging 2 proximity mines from the dirt and rearming them on the fly. By the time the Phantoms pursued, they tripped the charges. Boom. Half the ridge caved in. 3 more came from above. Reeve ducked a slash, shoved a power injector into one's chest, and overloaded it, turning the elite into a convulsing torch. He caught a second with a scavenged bone saw, across the neck. The third landed a knife in Reeve's back. And twisted. He collapsed. The world spun. He reached into his kit with trembling fingers. One last vial. Not a stimulant. Not a painkiller. A memory enhancer. Used for synaptic mapping. Why? Because Reeve wasn't fighting anymore. He was remembering. Every patient. Every name. Every friend who died in his arms. He jammed the vial into his carotid. His pupils dilated. And when he rose, he didn't scream. He smiled. Sir, he's back up, a Vrayl trooper said, terrified. He should be dead. Korvek gritted his teeth. He is. You're watching a corpse that refuses to fall down. Reeve moved through the battlefield like a phantom of his own. He patched a gunner's severed femoral artery with duct tape and body armor. He crushed a Phantom's visor with a rock, then immediately applied CPR to a nearby civilian. He lit a burn field with an old med flare to signal evac, and when none came, he carried the wounded across enemy lines himself. He should have died 15 times. But something, will, kept him upright. Humanity's last medic. Too stubborn to die. Too furious to let anyone else go first. Imani stared at the tactical feed, voice shaking. He's breaking them. Ma'am. He's not a weapon. He's a belief. Every soldier out there thinks if he's still moving, they can't lose. And for the first time that day, they started winning. But Dominion Command had a final card. Korvek stepped forward and issued the command himself. Bring down the Archons. The room went silent. Sir, that violates deployment thresholds. I said bring them down. That medic won't stop unless we bury the entire continent. Within seconds, the sky went black. Then came the hum. The Archons were not soldiers. They were weapons systems. 2 Titanic walkers, 3 stories tall, descended from orbit, smashing into the surface with the force of meteors. Their weapons pulsed with blue heat. Their armor was immune to conventional fire. They didn't speak. They just erased. Reeve saw the first Archon rise over the hill and knew what it meant. Everyone else was running. He didn't. He stood still. He looked at the medkit. Then the wounded around him. Then the Archon again. His hands trembled as he opened the kit. Inside, only 2 things. A high-voltage defib coil he'd fused into a Dominion core converter. And a photo. His squad. The original med detachment. All dead. Except him. He stared at it for a long moment. Then he removed the defib coil. And strapped it to his chest. Imani's voice screamed through the comms. Reeve, no. Lang whispered. What is he doing? He was doing what no one else would. Ending it. The Archon scanned him. Identified him as non-combatant. Dismissed him. Big mistake. Reeve sprinted directly into its path. The Archon raised a plasma lance. Too slow. Reeve dived under it, tore open the power hatch, and shoved the defib coil into its exposed core. The fusion destabilizer surged. Overcharged. Exploded. A sun bloomed in the center of the battlefield. Reeve's scream echoed in the detonation. Then silence. Cliffhanger ending. They found him in the crater. His body was broken. Burned. Barely breathing. But alive. His medkit was fused to his chest, a melted shell of what it once was. Captain Imani fell to her knees beside him. Why? She whispered. His eyes fluttered open. He could barely speak. But he mouthed the words. They needed me. Then everything went dark. Around them, the Dominion forces were retreating. Even the second Archon turned. And left. Because sometimes, even gods learn fear. Especially when a human with a medkit refuses to die. The medbay lights flickered, but Elias Reeve's vitals held steady, barely. Captain Imani stood over his shattered body as silence settled over Firebase Galloway. Outside, there were no explosions. No gunfire. Just the crackle of distant energy fires dying out. The Dominion had left. Not retreated. Not regrouped. Left. An entire carrier group had pulled out of the sector in the wake of Reeve's suicide charge against the Archon unit. No formal broadcast. No ceasefire. Just a message burned into every Dominion command channel. Do not pursue the Terran medic. He is not to be engaged under any circumstance. We no longer understand what he is. Lang stood at the foot of the recovery cot, staring at the man who had once dragged him from a burning tank. He's going to live, right? He asked. Dr. Kepler looked up from her data slate. I don't know what to tell you, she said softly. His heart stopped twice. His lungs are crushed. He sustained more internal damage than a crash survivor. By any medical standard. She looked down at Reeve. He should be dead. Lang looked at Reeve's hand. It twitched. Across the ruined valley, Dominion shock teams swept through the wreckage, but not to recover territory. Not to establish new lines. They were searching. For bodies. For equipment. For clues. Korvek stood amid the smoking crater where the Archon had fallen, staring at the smoldering remnants of a device no larger than his own hand. Reeves' defib coil. One side fused with Dominion core alloy. The other etched with a human phrase in Reeves' handwriting. "You can't kill hope." He didn't understand the meaning. But he understood the result. The next day, the Dominion High Council issued a formal directive. All Dominion combat units are now instructed to avoid direct confrontation with human medics. Medkits are to be considered tactical hazard markers. Engagement is prohibited unless numerical advantage exceeds 20:1. If a human medic is spotted moving toward the wounded, withdraw and recalibrate strategic assumptions. Rationale. Psychological field disruption. Rationale. Inability to predict operational behavior. Rationale. Reeve protocol. Back in the firebase, Reeve finally opened his eyes. Imani was there. So was Lang. So was the mother he'd saved. The child, smiling, held a crayon drawing of Reeve, standing tall with his medkit like a knight with a shield. He tried to speak. Imani gently placed a hand on his shoulder. "You don't need to say anything," she said. "We know." His mouth opened anyway. "Did they make it?" Lang stepped forward. "Everyone you touched made it." Reeve looked away. "Not enough." Imani's voice cracked. It was more than enough. She took the melted medkit, now enshrined in a plexiglass casing, and placed it beside his bed. And then, for the first time since the war began, she smiled. "You didn't just save lives, Elias. You saved us." The war didn't end that day. But everything changed. Other medics stepped forward. Trained under Reeves' doctrine. Adapt. Repurpose. Defy. The Dominion learned the hard way. Every time they saw a Terran field medic racing toward gunfire, their soldiers hesitated. And that hesitation cost them battle after battle. Because medics didn't run from danger. They ran into it. Years passed. Elias Reeve never returned to the front lines. His body wouldn't allow it. But his legacy did. The Reeve protocol spread through every human battalion. Medkits were no longer seen as symbols of vulnerability. They were threats. Tactical weapons. Carried by soldiers who turned death into life and despair into defiance. They even made a statue. Tall. Defiant. Holding a cracked medkit to the sky. The inscription read, "This is not surrender. This is not retreat. This is a warning." And on the other side of the galaxy, deep within Dominion space, young Vrail officers are still taught the same lesson. A hologram flickers to life in a dark war room. A human kneels beside a wounded ally, blood covering his uniform. A medkit crackles at his side. He turns to the camera, one eye glowing with pain, the other with fire. The instructor speaks softly. "If you see this," he says, "you are already too late."